So this will be a little story about my grandparents. So my mom was still only 16, a month away from 17 when I was born. And we lived with my grandparents, and my dad lived there. My mom and dad got married, right? So my grandfather took me fishing all summer. In the summers, like when I was a little guy, I remember him piggybacking me and carrying me and waking me up, and just really, I think he was trying to figure his life out at the time, and he's a deep thinker, and I got to be there. I was the sounding board that maybe he didn't even know it would stick. Maybe he really hoped it would, because things hadn't worked out up to that point, and I was the grandson, the first one, everything, whatever. So the close, we were his daughter's son, right? I only had one daughter. He had three sons. He only had one daughter, and I was his daughter's son. And my grandmother was sick, bless her. I didn't see a lot of her in the beginning, but she did one time when I lit a fire in the bedroom when I was only about 4. She came in through the mattress out the window, man, the big window, big old hose. The fire department, everybody was all, I guess it was a big thing, man. I'm sure it was, right? God bless her, man, tough. My grandmother taught me how to be tough. That's why I'm so happy when I can teach it to kids. So, my grandfather, just for a little, to go back a little bit, he was born in 1914, which is the year the First World War started. His family had recently immigrated to Canada. He was German, and he lived the first 4 years of his life during the First World War, which is, if you know anything about genetics and epigenetics and all that, then it has an effect on how you grow up and how you live your life. And then from the time he was maybe 5 until the time he was 16, he watched the economy rock. The war was over. There was so much money. Life was a hootenanny. So it really was sort of like today, I guess, but different. Then anyway, life was a hootenanny. So he couldn't wait, right? I'm sure. I don't know, but I'm sure. And then 29 hit October and the crash. And then they entered into the Depression. It actually didn't really even start until 37, I don't think. That's what some people say. I would probably say 29. But there was the second dip after a slow growth period. And so born during the First World War, 16, from 5 to 16, the biggest boom ever in history. Couldn't wait to get his hands into the money pie, right? And then the Depression. And then, another World War. You can't write this stuff, man. And so not long after the war, he was a gunnery sergeant. He taught people how to use weapons. Even though he signed up for overseas duty, he only ever went, I think, as far as Newfoundland. They used him anyway. He was offered extra pay when he became a sergeant. He turned it down because he said, I'm not overseas. I'm not going to make more money than those guys. That's the story I got anyway, and not necessarily from him. Lore, I guess it was family lore. But and then he came back, married his love of his life, had 4 kids, and the one was a little bit younger for sure, but pretty rapid succession. And then his wife got sick, and within 6 months, 3 of his kids, the older ones, not the one that was a little behind, the older ones all had shotgun weddings. And I'm the result of one of them. So, maybe they're not all bad. Maybe they're not all bad. But anyways, so my grandfather took me fishing for the next 5 summers, and we went over a lot of philosophy. He planted a lot of seeds in my mind that came back to me later in life. Like I remember him sitting me up in this big granite rock chair on top of this hill where you could see the whole below the valley and part of the lake and everything. And he would sit me up there and he would say, see, this is where the chief sits, where he can see everything. He's got to be able to see everything he's responsible for. Or, something simple like if I was too tired, he'd carry me, right? Like there's heavy symbolism there. Or he would time it so that we would come. It was about a mile and a half into the lake, I think. And I'd walk in, he'd carry me and everything, and he'd tell me stories. And I'm not going to tell you too many now, but he would time it so that after the chief's chair, we would go down the steep hill and turn the corner just as the sun was coming up over the lake. And as we were turning the corner, I was almost always talking, no kidding, right? And he would say, shh. And there it was, another beautiful day. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. My grandfather taught me so many beautiful things before I was 5. Then, when I spent some weekends there later on, between grade 8 and 6 or something maybe, between grade 4 and 6 or something on the weekends, he always had the place full of books. Full of books. Salvation Army, you'd go down and buy a whole box. 2 boxes. There was books. So I was always grateful for that. And then he took me to hockey for 2 years when I was in Bantam. He used to make the goalie mask for my uncle. Back when they just used to be the fiberglass, he used to put the straws in his nose and make the mask. And anyway, he never made me one, but I did wear one of those for a couple games. But anyway, he drove me to hockey. He paid everything right, 2 years. And the first year I was the goalie, the only goalie, host league, right? But Bantam. And we lost in triple overtime. The coach took me aside at the banquet and said, Mark, you really deserve the MVP, but I don't give it to goalies, sorry. The next year we won everything, including the championship. Oh, the first one we lost in triple overtime, right? 2 minutes and 8 seconds left, I believe. But anyway, it was awesome, man. But then the next year we won it all, and once again the coach called me aside and said, geez, Mark, you deserve the MVP, but I don't believe in giving it to goalies. So anyway, no problem. I guess my grandfather saw my competitive edge, which I guess is what he wanted to see, because when we won, that was it. Never took me to hockey again. But he did drive me, like when I had a job and I used to finish work at 1 o'clock in the morning. God bless him. I don't know how I know he's in bed 10 o'clock, right? But 1:30 in the morning, 1 o'clock in the morning, he'd be picking me up from doing dishes at Swiss Chalet, man. Sometimes I'd be getting ready to go out somewhere and he'd say, where are you going? I'd say, well, I'm just going out. Oh, well, let me give you a drive, Just always the drive, man. I still drive people today places because my grandfather showed me I was so grateful for what he did for me. And my grandmother, God bless her, is Polish Jewish, and I guess she had a tough time, right? Some people do. God bless them, man. We're not all created equal, that's for sure. That's why we shouldn't be judging people. We never know when we'll fall ourselves or come across some kind of a challenge that prevents us from giving what we'd like to give, if I can say that. So, but her family would come during the holiday season from Ontario, and I knew who I was. And my other grandfather, he had his own business. He used to sometimes count his money on his bed. He had a big safe. He didn't put money in the bank. He all wore cash. But anyway, so I sort of had that entrepreneurial thing. And later on is when my grandmother really came through. Because when I was 16, my grandmother had been in and out of the hospital my whole life, right? I moved out of my mom's house. And I kind of bummed around for about a year. And then my grandmother said to me one day, Mark, you have to come home. You have to move in and you have to go back to school. You can do it here. So who was I to say no? Of course, Nan, I will try. I will come back. Thank you. So I went back. And I think it took about 4.5 years in total. And she didn't go in the hospital once. Longest, nobody, like hardly nobody even remembers or believes it, but I lived it, so I know it, right? That's the difference when you live it. Dale Carnegie said, and they all stopped to listen, for it was not only obvious that he knew of that of which he spoke, but that he had also lived it. So I was really appreciating my grandmother, man, like so much. When I'm working, my meals are always ready, and like my laundry is always done. It's just really, really, really spectacular. And on the days when I'm not working or if I don't have a job, my grandfather would be banging on the heating pipes to wake me up at 7 o'clock. If you're not working and you're not going to school, you're going out to look for a job at 7:30. Yeah, man, good times. It really was, though. But anyway, so she kept me home for 4.5 years. And just before I had signed up, actually, to take a college course, we call it college, trade school, to take a pre-apprenticeship in refrigeration and air conditioning. And I'd been working off and on for a couple of years at the flour mill, making like, I think $2.45 an hour. And the regular guys there that weren't through the temp agency were making like 18 or something. It was the waterfront, right? So they get pretty good pay for what they did. Anyway, 2 weeks before I was to go to trade school, I asked them at the flour mill if they'd hire me full-time for the last 2 weeks. I explained my situation, said I wanted to buy some new clothes to go to school with and maybe have money to buy books. So the guy I spoke to, who's kind of a wig there, right? And he said, you know what, we happen to have a meeting tonight. I'll get back to you tomorrow. Sure enough, next day he came to me and he said, Mark, he said, we can't hire you for 2 weeks. It's too much paperwork. But we will hire you for ever, right? He said, we don't want to lose you. We want to bring you on full time. I said, you have to let me get back to you on that. I knew my grandmother was going above and beyond, and I wanted to give her the option. So I went home that night and I told her, I said, hey, Nan, I said, they offered me a full-time job at the flour mill making really good money. So I said, I can move out. I can take a job and I can move out. And I don't have to bother you and Pop anymore. But I said, if you want, I'll go to school. It's your choice. I appreciate everything. And she said, boy, she said, when your grandfather took a trade, it changed his life. She said, I want you to take a trade. I said, okay, Nan. So I went to school and I buckled down, did my homework, stayed on top of things, right? Luckily for me, because I think maybe one short of half the class even passed. I think at the end of the first month, a third were gone. They just couldn't keep up. But luckily for me, I was doing it for me and for the rest of my life, but also for my grandmother to show her how grateful I was. So I never got behind. And so, as we near the end of the story, God bless my grandparents, man. Please, thank you, Lord. As we near the end of the story, I graduated on a Wednesday. So nobody went. I mean, I don't think anybody really had anybody go when we went to trade school back then. But I think we all went because we had such a great year and we all had friendships and everything, right? That's why we went. And that night my grandmother said to me, here, boy, your grandfather was down in the Salvation Army today and bought you some clothes to wear to your graduation. And he had a pink shirt. It was brand new in the case, or in the plastic bag or whatever, right? Which was kind of like pink. And this would have been 82, I guess. And a blazer from the 50s with striping in it. It was gray with different color gray and pink and off-white stripes. It was pretty cool, actually. But I said, no, Nan, I can't wear that. I'm so sorry. I'm just going to wear jeans and a t-shirt. So she kind of gave me the eye. And she said, your grandfather spent good money and went out of his way. You're going to wear it. I said, okay, Nan. And I wore it, right? God bless her. What can I say to her? So I actually got lots of whistles when I walked across the stage. The story was out, you know, and everything, right? And anyway, great time, great outfit. So that was Wednesday. And on the Friday, reading dinner, and she said, boy, that's what she called me, right? Boy, she said, your grandfather and I were talking, and we thought you might move out. I said, Nan, that is not a problem. I said, school's finished. Give me 2 weeks to get a job. Another 3 weeks probably to get a check. Give me 6 weeks. I'm out of here. She said, boy, we were thinking this weekend. I said, Nan, I said, you know when I go out on Friday night, I don't come home till Sunday night anyway. So consider me moved out after dinner. I couldn't be more, I'm so happy, blah, blah, blah. I just love you, Nan. Too thankful. So thanked my grandfather as well, because, you know, he's the man in my life, right? He's what I followed when I came out of the ag, man. And then, so I moved out that Friday night, right? Because, you know, and on the Tuesday, my grandmother went back into an assisted care facility and spent the next 25 to 27 years in there until she finally passed away. She kept herself out of the hospital to get me through school, as sick as she was. That's why I could do it for my kids. It didn't matter the pain. As long as you weren't falling down and unable to get up, my grandmother taught me to put one foot in front of the other. My grandfather sort of gave me the mission before I was 5. My grandmother gave me the strength before I was 25. God bless them, man. As a matter of fact, one more quick little story about my grandfather. When he was 90, almost 91. Oh, a joke from my grandfather. He phoned me one day. I used to phone him like once a week or every other week, but he didn't usually phone me too much when he got older. But anyway, he phoned me. And he says, true story here. He says, Mark, he says, how many pills do you think I take every day to stay alive? I said, I don't know, Pop, how many? He says, well, come on, don't you want to guess how many pills I got to take every day to stay alive? I said, I have no idea, Pop, you'd have to tell me. He said, well, I take 5.5. I take 5.5 pills every day to stay alive, Mark. He said, I asked the doctor for another pill. And he said, the doctor told me, no, Mr. Webb. He said, you know what I asked him for? He said, I asked him for one of them little blue pills. And he told me, Mr. Webb, that pill could kill you. He said, Mark, he said, I'm 90. He said, I could die right now while I'm talking to you on the phone. Anyway, God bless him, man. He taught me everything. Taught me to save money. He taught me to look after my physical health. He taught me to live a good life. Anyway, so when he was finally passing away, the day of, I kind of got a feeling. And he'd been in the hospital for a week or so at the time, I guess. So I tried to get a hold of him, and he was moved to a different hospital even, not just a different wing. So it took me several phone calls, and finally I got a hold of his room. And back then there were telephones in the rooms, okay? They called them landlines. This wasn't yesterday. So it rang his room. There was a nurse in there. The nurse picked it up like it was just, I'm one of the luckiest guys you'll ever meet or talk to, no matter what people may say or believe. That's what I know to be true. So the nurse picked up the phone. And I said, hello, is Mr. Webb there? And she said, I'm sorry, you're too late. I said, no, I'm not too late. She says, oh yeah, you're too late. I said, no. I said, you tell him that Mark is on the phone. She said, Mark who? My grandfather said, oh my gosh, that's Mark, give me the phone. So she gave him the phone. He said, you found me. I said, Pop, I had to find you. I said, you gave me the opportunity to build a life and to raise kids like I did. You gave them opportunity too. And you helped to make the world a better place. I had to find you. I had to thank you. I had to tell you I love you. And it was a pretty short conversation. But first thing he said to me, you found me. Yes, Pop, I had to find you. Forever grateful to my grandparents. Love, like unbelievable love.